مساكم الله بالخير جميعا حضورنا الكريم مجددا في ملتقى الأكاديمية المالية 2025 وفي النسخة الرابعة المميزة التي تحمل معها الكثير من المبادرات الاستراتيجية والجلسات الحوارية وكذلك الأجنحة المصاحبة للملتقى. نخوض وإياكم الآن في جلستنا الحوارية الثانية والتي تأتي بعنوان استراتيجيات مستدامة لتنمية الكفاءات القيادية. سنسلط الضوء في هذه الجلسة على أدوات واستراتيجيات التطوير القيادي عبر الشراكات مع بيوت الخبرة الدولية وتطبيقها لدعم رأس المال البشري. كذلك دور تطوير الأداء المهني في إعداد قيادات مهيئة لمتطلبات المستقبل وتعزيز الممارسات القيادية المستدامة ضمن البيئات المتغيرة. سنسلط الضوء أيضاً على استعراض النماذج العالمية في إدارة الكفاءات القيادية وتكييف أفضل الممارسات مع البيئة المحلية لبناء قدرات قيادية فعالة. دعوني أرحب باسمكم جميعاً بمن سيقود دفة هذا الحوار وهو السيد هاميش مدان. كذلك أرحب باسمكم جميعاً بضيوف هذه الجلسة الحوارية بداية من سعادة رئيس قطاع رأس المال البشري في مصرف الإنماء الأستاذ عبدالله السلامة. كذلك الترحيب وبكل حب بسعادة الرئيس التنفيذي للموارد البشرية في التعاونية الأستاذ عاصم السعوي. أيضاً نرحب بثالث ضيوف هذه الجلسة سعادة الرئيس التنفيذي لمعهد CISI وهي السيدة تريسي. وأخيراً نرحب برابع ضيوف هذه الجلسة سعادة الرئيس التنفيذي لمعهد CII السيد ماثيو هيل.
Okay, great, thank you. Please be seated. Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity, and I'd like to have a warm welcome to my guests today. It's an exciting topic. It's something that personally I've spent pretty much all of my career helping people learn and grow, and leadership development is key to my heart. Just to follow on from the earlier conversation, we heard some really well-established leaders talk about the change that is going on in Saudi Arabia. We talked about culture is transforming, about how individuals need to take, accountability for themselves in terms of their own learning and development, and there's plenty of opportunities here. So to get the conversation started, and I'll try and be kind, but we're not going to stick to script, just so that we're going to go off script a little bit. But I guess to get started, there's a lot of investment in leadership development here, right? And many of the people in this room who will be future leaders or leaders today are going to be sent on leadership development programs all around the world. And so I guess my first question to all of you, just to get us started and warmed up, is when we make these investments and people go on these programs, when they come back into this ecosystem that we have, the culture that we have, the way that we work, when they come back, how do we make sure, or how do we help them to make the learning stick? How long does it last? So just to get warmed up, maybe if you could share your own experiences and some insights about what you've seen, what works well, how do we make that happen?
Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh jami'an. I'm happy to be here today. Thanks a lot for the Financial Academy, for the invitation. Thanks a lot for the attendees. Back to your question, and if we put it in the context that we are talking about the formal training, I see it from my perspective it consists of 3 layers to answer the question. The first one is the foundation, the ongoing initiatives, and the measurement. The foundation, it is very necessary to have the consistent competencies framework in any organization to help recruiting and developing leaders. Then the values system that will govern the behavior of the leaders. The second part, when we talk about the ongoing initiatives, I think we are talking about the coaching, mentoring, encourage the culture of continuous learning. In addition to that, sometimes you need to design your courses that develop leaders in a different way. For example, we are doing it, especially for middle management, by intervals. So you'll take 2 days for specific modules, then you let the participant to practice for a few months, then you come back to another module, and etc. So you will see the program will span over a year with multiple modules, with letting them to practice during that period. Finally, it's very important to measure. As organizational level, you have to have certain KPIs to monitor the progress, to make it sustainable. Also for the leaders themselves, they should have their own special KPIs to monitor their progress when they develop their competencies.
Thank you, Abdullah. So some great tips, right? It's having journeys instead of programs. That's good. I think coaching to support that, KPIs, and taking some ownership of that. How about in your organization? How do you help leaders to make sure that learning sticks?
Sure. Let me start by saying that it's not an easy job. Maybe when you usually develop a technical skills, maybe the job is easier. And I think if we take a step earlier, which is before we are designing this initiative, we need to ensure there is a clear objective.
Right.
And we are setting what is the expected outcomes from these initiatives in the first place. So that, and I see it as very helpful also when you share it with the participants, but by what is the expected from you after you complete or you finish these initiatives. Another maybe common mistake I see it during my experience is that when you target a certain competencies, but in the same time your ecosystem or your internal ecosystem doesn't allow people to practice these competencies when they are come back. I can give you an example of skills like decision making, for example. So you have sometimes a development program for decision making to enhance the decision making, but the nature of job for people when they come back to their offices doesn't allow them to make decisions. So ensuring that also your internal ecosystem is allowing people to practice what they have learned will help to stick. I might also add that I've seen mentorship and coaching is a very important tools. Help people to usually try to translate what they have learned when they come back to their normal days.
Great, thank you. Before I move on, I told you I was going to ask you questions that are off script, so here we go. Great, I love that about having people take decision making when they come back. Earlier on in the conversation we had, some of the guest speakers were talking about psychological safety in the work environment and culture. Right. So I guess before we just move on to Tracy, do we have that environment? Are we creating that environment where we've got psychological safety so you can take risks, you can make decisions, right? Is that something that is developing? And I'm going to come back to you first, Asim, before we move on. Sorry to put you on the spot, but I warned you.
No, it's totally okay. I think this depends very much for the culture of the organization and the level of maturity for different organizations. I don't think it's something that comes from naturally, something that we need to build, and we need to definitely allow people to go and take risks and make mistakes. I mean, we live in a world moving very quickly. So if you calculate every single step or every single decision, definitely will be late when you made that decision. So creating that culture of people to make mistakes and take risks, it's definitely an important. Usually, I think it's a combination between part of it from the culture of the organization to allow people to take such a risk, and at the same time from the individual. The individual also, they have to take the risk and test the water and try to take some risky move.
Great, thank you. And we're going to hear that word culture coming up time and time again, and we've already heard it this morning. Tracy, over to you. How do we make learning stick?
Well, as everyone said, it's culture, isn't it? And I was impressed by what the 2030 vision is doing, because it's setting a framework where you're going to get ambitious people to actually take those risks that you've just talked about. So learning for me is continuous. It doesn't matter how highly qualified you are, everything is changing around us. So continuous professional development is probably a goal that all of us should have and talk about more. I think role models, as a professional body, CSI is very good at showcasing our members. Often we will just put out a piece around how somebody's learning journey has gone, and it's quite inspiring for other people. So I think having those examples of people who took the opportunity, what they learned, but also what they added back, be it to their employer or their professional community, is quite important. The other thing I was going to add is I think you can't start too early what your journey is going to be in terms of all the different learning. Because if you learn to be embracing of change, open to new ideas, from the very beginning, you're going to start adding value in whatever organization you're in. You can see with the Financial Academy itself how innovative it is as a body. And that then helps the people who are regulated and governed by the Capital Markets Authority and so on. It's a partnership approach. And I think if you can get that in the people in the organization, as well as the frameworks around financial services, that's where you really do start to see people embracing development and wanting to be the very best. And if you get that culture, then you're going to win.
Right. There you go. That word culture comes again. And I love what you said about having role models in the organization. Right. I think it's really important to do that. And another thing that you've just said, which I think is related to culture, and I feel that a lot here, is around contributing back to the community, which also is defined by the culture in your organization as well. And I see it in Saudi Arabia more than anywhere else about the appetite and willingness to do that. Over to you. So how do we make learning stick from your experience?
Thank you, Hamish. I think it's a great question. But before I answer the question, I'm going to say thank you to the Financial Academy for the opportunity to take part today. It's a great privilege to travel to Saudi Arabia and be part of this esteemed panel. But turning to the question, I think the first thing to do is, when you're thinking about leadership programs, find programs that align to the culture of the organization. Leadership is hard enough as it is without asking budding leaders, would-be leaders, to break the cultural mold as well as be leaders. So find things that go with the grain of your organization and your institution. The second thing I would say is to echo remarks that have already been made about when people come back from their leadership programs, treat them as leaders. Give them opportunities to lead and to lead successfully, and be reasonably tolerant where people fall short of that high mark. Because if the first thing you do when you give somebody the opportunity to lead is punish them when things go wrong, you will not create a leader. The third thing I would say is, as well as exposure to role models and mentors and coaches and all of that, at the CII, we believe that the best learning resource in the world is your peers. So how can you use your membership of a profession, insurance in the case of the CII, to create a network from which you can derive support and insight and learning that might last you your entire career, actually. So I would say they were three important things to make this learning real.
Yeah, thank you, Matthew, for making that point. And I know my own personal experience, I have learned more from my peers I'd argue, than I have on programs. But
indeed.
it sparks it out, doesn't it? So that's been good advice for many of the people that are sitting here, whether you're aspiring to be a leader or whether you are in charge of running leadership development programs. Some good insights. I'm curious to find out more about what the organizations here are actually doing. So, Sim, if I can come to you first. We've got, my experience in Saudi Arabia is that we work with international providers. We are trying to incorporate technology into how people learn and grow. So I'd be curious to hear from you about what's it like, what's been your experience of working with international organizations, and how has that worked? How do we make sure that, again, that word culture, how do we make sure that programs are designed that are in line with the culture? So any things that you can share with your experience of working with organizations, what's worked, what are the main challenges, what advice would you give? Over to you first, Issy.
Sure. First thing come to my mind is cost, but but I think this is something usually we end up agreeing on. No, honestly, maybe I would mention two main points. The first one is we need to help the international institution to understand our needs. One of the maybe common area where we take off-the-shelf program, where we see the program being designed for some other parts of the world and we see it successful, and we take it as it is, then we come and implement it in our culture. I think working closely with the international school, definitely they are adding a lot of value, but from our side as an HR or development leader, we need to ensure that we customize the program to suit our culture and organization more. I think this is a very important area. The other challenge, sometimes you can get the quality that being provided by international institute, but you cannot take the same quality when you translate it to Arabic. So I would say language barrier is sometimes challenging. We have an experience where we have a program. The material is easy to be translated, but when you have the facilitator or the coaches, you cannot get sometimes the same quality with the. So we have a mass number of employees. We want to train them in a certain skills, and the majority of them, they would prefer Arabic as a language for the program. So we have our internal trainer who speaks Arabic, being trained, the trainer, by the international school, and shadowing for the faculties of these schools. Then they take the program. To a certain extent, we kind of come over that challenge.
Great. So some good tips. Negotiate hard with international providers. Don't take off-the-shelf programs because they need to be tailored and customized. And I do like the last piece around. I think there's an effort here to build capability in Saudi Arabia with Saudi people, because there's a lot of very talented facilitators here.
Right.
And so I think if we can find the formula that helps us build our own capability here, it will help us in the long term. Abdullah, if I can come to you on a slightly different note, would be keen to know, what are you doing at the bank that is, what kind of programs are you implementing right now, and are you using technology? What's the buzz at the moment inside your organization?
We believe in the bank, the main success factor for leadership development, when we refer to step number one, when we hire the leaders, especially the CEO and N-1, because we strongly believe that the good behavior will be inherited in the organization. So you will save more effort, more time for training the people, because those behaviors are inherited and being encouraged by the leaders. Like the other organization, for sure we are doing a lot of development initiatives, but would like to highlight one initiative that I think it's unique in the kingdom, where we establish the occupational health unit. This unit is responsible to give the development and support for the leaders. When we establish the leadership framework, we are getting many indicators through the surveys in a very privacy mode, trying to address some behavioral issues or areas of development for the leaders, and we share with them those areas of development with the KPIs and monitor this over the time. We see a lot of results because the main factor, it's hidden from the managers or the management, because the leader himself will take these results in a very private mode. He will work with this unit in order to develop some behavioral weaknesses. In addition to the other programs for the coaching, mentoring, using the online access for different sources of information.
Abdullah, thank you. That's leading edge. I think that's the first time I've heard bringing in occupational health to help leaders. And so I'm wondering, just linked to that, is that connected to well-being, mindfulness as well? Are you thinking about how you make sure that we're making sure that our employees have a strong well-being culture?
Yeah, what I just described is part of the big umbrella, big framework of the well-being. So we have a lot of initiatives, but because we believe that the behavior of the leaders impacting the rest of the organization. So we have some top-down initiatives, and we have other bottom-up initiatives addressing the issues of the staff.
Great. And for those of you that are interested, there's a strong research in how well-being links to performance. So we need to think about that. I know people here work very, very hard, and there's lots of research about, specifically about Saudi Arabia. So I'd encourage everyone to think about, what is the environment they're creating for employees, and making sure we look after everyone. Matthew, I'm going to come over to you next. Again, a slight twist on the question, and maybe just understanding you've got a global organization from your perspective. Are there things that you've discovered or you can share from a global level that are accelerators of helping people learn and grow, right? Competency building, right? So what can help accelerate that? Because everything here is moving very fast.
So I think that's a great question. And again, before I answer it, I'm going to say in response to Asim's remark that I've never met negotiators as good as the ones in Saudi Arabia.
I second that.
Absolutely. So I've got no fear on that score. But the broader point, really, leadership is nothing without purpose, in my view. And as a professional body with a global presence, the CII focuses on elements of purpose that are to do with the value that the professions we're interested in, insurance and financial planning, bring to society. So I actually think it's very motivating to instill in young leaders a sense that what they're doing is more than just a job, and that actually something like insurance is of such profound importance to society that how they go about their job, how they lead, actually makes a difference that is beyond themselves, beyond their teams, beyond their company, but actually has an impact on society. And I think, if we can get that right, and you can say the same for the full range of financial services, if you, alongside the motivation to do good business and be commercially very successful, to recognize that societies across the world couldn't function in the way that they do without what financial services professionals do and how they lead. So it's that sense of excitement and pride that we're trying to generate at the CII with partners all across the world.
Yeah, thanks, Matthew. And I think, again, just another follow-on from that, I do like this thing around purpose and teaching people how to lead, because I think sometimes getting skill-building workshops and certifications is one thing, but that doesn't make you a more effective leader. Right?
Precisely.
It doesn't make you a more effective leader.
Precisely.
So just quick follow-on, unscripted. How do you help to shape purpose in an organization? How would you do that? What advice would you have?
So in many ways, it is similar to the other questions that we're discussing today on leadership. You lead. You create a compelling narrative, and you communicate that in terms that people can engage with. So, I'll make no apologies for continuing to talk about insurance, because we think insurance is marvelous. We think all the other financial services are marvelous too, but we know insurance. What we find with the insurance profession is that it has a collective trait of being very modest about its achievements and very modest about what it brings to society. And so what we're trying to do is build a narrative that insurance professionals can embrace and that will enable them to go out and enthuse and tell the story and tell their friends and their family. Insurance is a marvelous thing, and it helps us run our lives and helps us run our businesses and get the word out in that sense. It's like creating a movement, and movements cannot be created without leadership. Leadership cannot happen without stories. So what is the story that we tell?
Yeah, great. And I think that's just following on from the earlier conversation around the war for talent here.
Absolutely, it is so relevant,
right,
because we're all fishing in similar sorts of pools, and we need to create an attractive proposition. I would like every young person graduating in Saudi Arabia to know that insurance offers a fantastic, fulfilling, rewarding career with opportunities to change the world. And that when they're thinking about their future career, insurance is up there alongside banking, or dare I say medicine, or whatever it happens to be, as a shining light. And we haven't got there yet, but we're working very hard to get there.
And I'd add again, just in terms of the talent for war, that we have want to work for people that care about us. We talked about
totally.
It's so important, right?
Very, very important.
So if you're struggling in terms of the war for talent, one of the things, yes, we can develop people, send them on programs, have coaching, but again, the research shows that a culture that is caring, and if people feel that they're being cared and looked after, that's also important to retain people. Tracy, you're just share your points of view on these topics, and I know you're a CEO of a large organization, and so what are your perspectives on this topic?
Again, I violently agree with everything that's been said, because particularly in Saudi Arabia, you have a very young demographic, and people will need to take all sorts of lessons and skills and so on, because you have the perfect position that you need all this talent. You actually have lots of jobs for them to go into, and so people need to feel that sense of belonging that Matthew talked about. It's about, for me, not just professionalism and belonging, but it's integrity and ethics. And if you live by those standards, then of course you're going to create an organisation that people want to be part of. The other thing I would say on a practical level, things that we've introduced, like the My CSI app, it's been a game changer, because people want to learn almost at the time they want to learn. So they're generally rather busy in the great jobs that they're fulfilling daily. So actually being able to learn when you need to learn is another message. And I was wondering, again, if there's scope for that kind of, take time out to learn even during the working day. What kind of sessions do people do around the lunch tables and things like that? You need to blend the professional and the structured with that sort of opportunities to be a little bit more, in the moment discussing issues. And that may be something that fits very well with the sort of well-being and behavioural stuff, because it's giving people that opportunity. The other thing I'd say is none of us ever say enough that there's no real bad idea, because you always learn from it. Something that doesn't go well, technically, you often learn more from than something that's gone well. Yesterday, we visited CODE, the government body that's around digital innovation for entrepreneurs, and I was amazed at the hands-on support they get. There's a real nurturing network. From the minute you walk through the door, it screamed learning and support. Right. That's really hard to achieve, but it was really notable in the organisation. And I think that joining up across all the different wings of government will enable learning to be shared from different sectors too. And I again agree, it's not just about financial services or insurance or medicine. There are probably careers we've never even thought of that might be coming in 5 or 10 years. People are more demanding as clients, aren't they? So actually the softer skills are important.
Great. So this all sounds easy. It sounds like we've got to work on culture, we've got to make sure we have purpose, we've got to provide people with the opportunity to learn and grow, we've got to have networking, peer networks, all easy, right? Oh, it's all easy. Okay, so I guess my next question is, well, what gets in the way? If it's so easy, what actually gets in the way? And so from the experience that you have as CHROs in your organizations, have you found barriers to people, either their ability to learn and grow or organizational barriers? And I'll start with one, and then I'll hand over to you, I think, is time. And we talked about, always on the go and always working, the work is piling up. And so do we give people enough time to learn and grow? So what kind of barriers exist and what can we do about it?
Sure. I think one of the main maybe theme is the lack of engagement. So you need to ensure that you are engaging with the right stakeholders about whatever initiatives that you have in an early stage. It's very important when you are about to take people through a learning journey, their department to be engaged on that journey from the early stage. I mean, in some example, also I see a chance where you can include them as part of the design of the program. They would surprise you by the maybe case studies they might add to the curriculum. And maybe the second thing is the effort that you put into the level of communication when you communicate these initiatives. It's very important. And what I mean by communication, you communicate by trying to answer the why this initiative is there, and also for the individual to answer the question of what's on it for me. So it's very important for the individual to know why he's been nominated for this initiative. I think with these the engagement and communication, usually they could help to overcome whatever barriers, especially the time when they cannot allow enough time for people.
Yeah, and a quick follow-on question for you as well, Asim. So is it a one-size-fits-all? Because one of the things that I've often discussed is we have different learning styles.
Exactly.
I mean, the way I learn is probably different to the way you learn.
Sure.
And so I think, for me, just to add to what you're saying, we need to recognize that people learn in different ways, and these leadership development programs need to accommodate for different styles of leadership. Abdullah, how about you in your organization? What kind of challenges do we face in terms of implementing leadership programs? And also, maybe you can talk about how do we align global standards, global programs, and global competencies with what we actually need here in the region.
Yeah. Okay. If you asked me this question 10 years ago, maybe we'll find a lot of challenges and gaps in the country when it comes to the leadership practices and development. But since we have this ambitious vision and the big transformation that created the ecosystem for the leadership and created a lot of competent leaders to lead the different programs. we have some opportunities, not challenges, when it comes to the inclusion, the female participation, especially in the leadership position. Back also to what we have specific in Al-Inma as a challenges for the learning is the time, because we are a performance-driven organization. All people is trying to push for performance, no time for learning, no time for practice. So you have to have, or to make them a little bit available for learning, because it's a mandatory component also to maximize the performance.
Yeah, great. Time comes up again and again, and again, the bit of advice to everyone here is, and we heard it earlier on, is it's not just the organization's responsibility to develop you, it's your own responsibility as well. So use your time to help yourself learn and grow. Tracy, how is your organization helping the organizations that you work with here? How are you helping them to overcome barriers to learning and growing?
I think we try and always work in partnership with any organisation we work. We set high standards for all the people we work with, and that's a thing that then stimulates both of you to come up with what's best for the people that they're looking after. So we've helped with technology. So we've got a learning platform that enables people to do learning in different chunks, modules, certifications, not just the classic qualifications. And it logs that as their CPD. That's all done automatically. So you cut out that element of process around things, and it makes it just a bit more interesting. It also means that for the employer who's funding a lot of the training, they know that people are doing it. They know that they're achieving a standard. So it's a very simple and quick way of everybody hitting those KPIs that we've all said are so important. The other thing I'd also say is that on everything, it's the communication that something is valuable that helps make people want to do it. And sometimes we almost put learning in a box that is almost a bit of a chore. And I think if you can get that spirit of it's going to add value to every aspect of what you do, not just kind of in the particular job you're in today, but the jobs you might be going into the future, so that you're really getting that leadership is a journey, and you start here, but you aim to do more. With the right role models, as we said, I think it can make it really stimulating and exciting. And certainly our job at CSI is to make all of the learning celebrated. When I come and do the award ceremony, it's brilliant to see how many more people are taking the qualifications, getting ever higher marks. That's a massively motivating thing.
That's great. And we talked about earlier how the scores that people in Saudi Arabia are getting are increasing. So that's great. And I like that, surrounded by continuous learning. I think it's a nice theme there. Matthew, if I was going to come to your organization and say, hey, how do you help us make sure that learning sticks and we overcome barriers, what advice would you have to give to us?
So I'm going to talk about two things. One is this question of time, which I think is very interesting. And if you'll permit me a short anecdote. Many years ago, when I was embarking on my first leadership development program in the early 90s, as it happens, that dates me. I was asked to fill in a form, and there was a box, and it said, how much time do you spend on leadership? And I was very puzzled by this, because as far as I was concerned, I spent all my time on leadership. Everything I did was an opportunity to exercise leadership, and I think it's very important for all the leaders and budding leaders in this room to recognize that leadership is an always-on quality. It never gets switched off. And this connects to the point you were making earlier on about well-being. I think it's very important to see leaders as whole people with lives outside work. And the more you can encourage and support people to have fulfilling lives in their entirety, the more likely it is that they will be effective leaders in the workplace. They will be more productive. If for nothing else, that they've got other things that they would like to go and do. So the more efficient and effective they are in work, the more time they will free up to live that fuller life. So I'm fully on board with that. Just to change tack slightly, I think one of the main barriers experienced by young leaders is a lack of sort of visibility or transparency about the sorts of paths that one might take to senior careers. And it's one of the reasons why at the CII we've developed, in consultation with the insurance profession all over the world, actually, what we call the professional map, which sets out a set of skills and competencies and, importantly, behaviors that one might seek to acquire at different steps in a professional journey. So that instead of leaving young leaders to figure it out for themselves at the start, because often it can be a mystery, we give them a much more transparent, clear picture of the choices that they might make in their development as they chart their path to greatness, I would say.
I love that. I wish I had that when I was younger. I think something about clarity around career path, clarity, I think it's really
absolutely, and let me tell you, it's available free of charge
Yes.
from the CII website.
It wasn't 30 years ago. So I wonder. So I'm talking about time. I'm sure we are close to time. So I'd like to just I'd like to close off with a lot of young people in the audience here have got wonderful careers ahead of them, and here we are with a lot of wonderful history behind us. So maybe we could start with you, Matthew. What is a piece of advice that you would give to someone who is sitting in the audience that has still got stars in their eyes, the future is theirs, and what advice would you have to give to them?
So I'll reflect on a point that was made a few minutes ago about taking responsibility for one's own development. That's very important. Your organization cannot make you a leader. It can help you. Only you can make you a leader. And the starting point is self-awareness, the ability to analyze, to be self-critical, to understand one's strengths and weaknesses, blind spots, comfort zones and uncomfortable zones, so that you can build your own sense of the skills and behaviors that you need to acquire, accentuate, push down, to create that rounded sense of integrity, trust, direction, vision that together makes up leadership. Self-awareness, point number one on the list.
Great. Thank you for that. And there's a lot to unpack in what you've just said. But I think it's a nice summary. I think self-awareness is a nice summary. Tracy, over to you. And I'm coming this way as we end up. Yeah.
I'd say be ambitious. Never set yourself a low standard. Set a high bar and you'll always achieve something bigger. Definitely lifelong learning. Live by that concept. And the vibrancy and interaction you have with other people will always help you learn.
Great. I see.
I would say I think we are extremely lucky in Saudi Arabia by experiencing this exciting time with the 2030 vision. I think that will create a lot of opportunity. My advice is that we start seeing a younger leader being introduced to a leadership position in an early career. We start seeing people with 4 or 5 years experience. They are CEOs for startup companies. So my advice, start introducing yourself to leadership development in an early stage. Maybe my second advice is I think the key for everything is curiosity. So as much as possible, be curious, know about everything, not only about your domain or your job, is very important. And maybe my third advice is that now we are experiencing leaders at the moment who are leading different generations. So knowing the generation differences is very important. Sometimes you lead people who are older than you and younger than you. I mean, in Ta'awuniya, we start hiring people who were born in 2003 and 4 at the moment. So, and at the same time, we have people in 60s and 70s. So, knowing the generation differences, I think it's a crucial.
Wonderful advice. Generational differences, and they pop up in every part of the world. Every part of the world. Thank you for that advice. Abdullah.
Yeah. In addition to the golden advices from my colleagues, I will add 3 main advice. First, self-learning. Second, the commitment. And the third, to be patient. Because we are in the country like that we are taking a very fast airplane going to the future. So get ready, take your boarding pass, and join us.
Great, thank you for that. And my closing comments as well, my bit of advice would be take care of yourself. Make sure you sleep enough, eat healthy, be healthy, look after your body, that's number one. I'm a strong supporter of that, and my advice to organizations would be take care of your staff. Yes, you want people to work hard, but you know, there's a pace at which people can operate. So if you can create a culture of well-being and a culture of caring about your employees, that's the key to getting them to perform, retaining people. And with that, I've enjoyed this. We've kind of stayed on script, but we've had a few curveballs here and there, and you guys have done amazingly well, amazingly well. Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure, and I hope you've enjoyed the conversation. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
شكرا لك سيد هاميش، شكرا أيضا لضيوفك الكرام في هذه الجلسة الحوارية. سنتوقف الآن لمدة 10 دقائق فقط، ومن ثم نعود في جلسة حوارية. لا تذهبوا بعيدا.